Alright, hi guys. Tonight I'm going to be explaining the Islamic State in regards to international relations. And given what all the headlines it has created, I think it does deserve this, and I think you should understand this to possibly prevent future conflicts. But anyways, before I get any further, I just want to explain that my screen can't right now can't see the entire screen, so I calibrated everything perfectly, so like you'll be able to see this area, and like the stuff I'm gonna have to present later on is gonna be in that tiny area. So yeah, took some time. Anyways, moving on, a brief history about ISIS. So ISIS did not originally start as what we know now as ISIS. It was really started out as something else, and it began from a man named a Jordanian named Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Now, basically, this was around 1998, and he wanted to join. He was a wannabe mujahideen and wanted to fight in Afghanistan, but he arrived too late, and he remained a sort of shadow figure in in the international jihad community. Anyhow, following the fall of the Taliban in 2001, it forced Zarqawi to flee to Iraq, and his presence there was more largely unnoticed. However, soon after the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, he led what we know as the forerunner to today's Islamic State. And in this time, obviously, he was looking to create his own terror organization. But anyhow, he actually did meet with Bin Laden, and got a lot of his credit from him. But their targets were drastically different. Zarqawi actually targeted the Iraq's majority Shia population, and while Bin Laden saw this as wiping and eliminating potential supporters, Zarqawi saw otherwise and targeted them for slaughter, as he saw them mainly as heretics. Anyhow, moving on. Basically, after Saddam's fall, Zarqawi was counting on this, and with the implementation of Shiite politicians in power, he counted on Sunni resentment to further strengthen his power. And in 2004, Zarqawi's campaign of suicide bombings made him notorious among the jihadi international movement. However, later on his targeting of civilians led to misgivings among Al-Qaeda in the Iraqi leadership, which at this time was by itself known as AQI, or also known as, yeah, shown here. But anyways, moving on. In spring of 2006, he began to see himself as more of an emir, or simply what Abu Bakr appeals to be right now. But yeah, you get what I mean. He basically wants to become more of a leader, a spiritual leader in the eyes of his people, of his soldiers, people. Yeah, I'd say so. Anyhow, his dream was cut shortly in June 2006 when the U.S. Army actually dropped a pair of 500-pound bombs upon his hideout, and yes, he was dead. However, this was not the end. After his death, tide turned against AQI. Not only were they demoralized, basically what happened was many of the Sunni tribes which had originally supported Zarqawi began to fight back because of his strict Sharia laws. And at the time, General David Petraeus, who was in charge of the U.S. military, took this as a good opportunity and began in what you know as an insurgency within an insurgency. And this was known as the Awakening. Many tribesmen at the time who were actually willing to fight AQI, even if they had been previously fighting Americans, due to two reasons. First, they hoped that they would give them immunity from previous crimes, and it would give them a share of political power and money in Iraq. And basically what happened was it actually worked. AQI began to fade away, and violence was reduced at the time. It was simply, however, Petraeus' plan, we have to note that it was only to reduce violence and not to repair the Sunni-Shiite rift, which is the core root of this problem. The U.S. did set up political dialogue between the two groups, but the effort was at best desultory, and it was led up to al-Maliki to make peace. However, al-Maliki and his administration were more interested in recrimination rather than reconciliation. The Sons of Iraq, or previously mentioned, the tribesmen who had previously fought with the Americans, were denied the promises that they were initially promised. And many of those, and to make matters worse, many of the Sunni politicians were ignored and humiliated. And at one point, one of them was actually tried, illegitimately tried for terrorism, and in fact executed. And at this point, Sunni resentment bubbled up again, setting the stage for AQI's return. And yeah, so by 2011, when U.S. withdrawal was near complete, AQI was run by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and it had morphed from largely foreign to a largely Iraq population. And as he suggests, as al-Baghdadi himself suggests, the name is local. And basically, so he decided that the group needed another name, and it was better known as the Islamic State of Iraq, also known as ISI. And afterwards, Baghdadi took Zarqawi's tactics and basically supercharged them. Not only were the Shiites still his main targets, he sent suicide bombers to attack basically anything related to the police, from checkpoints to recruiting stations to police stations. But anyways, to make matters worse, ISI's ranks were swelled by former Sons of Rock who had previously been soldiers and who had served in Saddam's military. And basically this strengthened AQI more, or ISI more, as an actual army rather than a ragtag militant outfit. But anyways, with thousands of armed men now at his disposal, Baghdadi actually opened up a second front in Syria. And this part, as I just mentioned, with increase of numbers of his men, and many of these men experienced, basically he had basically basically an army standing right before him. And basically at this time, after making a lot of gains against other rebel groups and even Assad himself, he renamed his group the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and basically this reflected his greater ambition to dominate the entire area. And as of now, they have been taking control of larger chunks of the area, and minority groups and ethnic groups have been targeted using special taxes, forced to leave, or converted, or face death, though the last two are preferable to many of the ISIS fighters. Anyhow, most known was semi-recent, which was on August 2014, the Yazidi genocide on Mount Sinjar, and basically this was very atrocious, as ISIS fighters just simply targeted them for mass killings, and they were completely massacred, helpless. But more recently, there's been a battle raging on for Kobani, and right here in the first picture, well, New York Times would not let me show this picture, so I'll just bring it up anyways. Which is right here. No, not that one. Which is right around here. So here you have the city of Kobani. Here you have Turkish tanks, which ISIS has actually threatened to take over Turkey later on if they do not open the dam. But anyways, this is just a small distance, 1 mile. 1 mile between Turkey and Turkey, a relatively peaceful place right now, given that bombings have sort of ended. And 1 mile from chaos in the city of Kobani. Yeah, and basically this is a very fragile situation. But anyways, back to the point, moving on, basically onto who's involved and what's happening. Basically, there are only two major people that are dominating right now, or mainly one, but still have to know the first one anyways. Zarqawi basically is the founder, as I previously mentioned, and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is basically the current leader, or caliphate leader, whatever they call it, of ISIS. And this is one of the very few pictures that have actually been taken of him. He has not appeared in the public very much, and the CIA does not actually know much about him at all. But anyhow, main incidents that have occurred over the past few months or weeks, as I previously said, battle for Kobani, and ISIS is actually solidifying. That's important, and ISIS solidifying control over the Anbar province. ISIS threatening to attack Russia, and has actually invaded Lebanon, and has begun harassing Hezbollah fighters. More importantly, what actually sparked the U.S. coalition against ISIS and strikes were the beheading incidents against the James Foley, something Foley, yeah, and many other journalists, which have been quite atrocious. But moving on, life in ISIS. So based on many different sources and interviews, and even the Vice News documentary, um, basically, Sharia law is their main thing. It's like their main law, their constitution, and it's enforced by the Hizbut brigade. And basically, they just, as the video showed, they patrolled around and made sure that everything was more as parallel to what the Islam taught in the Quran. And punishments were determined by judges with well knowledge of Islam law from the Quran. And these punishments ranged from whippings to execution, and it was all based from teachings from the Quran. But more importantly, what we have to note is that with Sharia law also comes a Sharia school curriculum, which basically meant the caliphate itself has basically limited down to, and they've cut down everything from math. Actually, math I'm not sure, but law school teachings, philosophy, all of this sort has actually been eliminated and banned. Anyhow, moving on, they've actually, from the document, they actually have a pretty working bureaucracy and performs public services and provides social welfare and do collect taxes in the area. And from what Wikipedia says, there are actually 12 local governments within the area, with local councils beneath them in charge of everything in the department, from taxing, welfare, even execution. So yeah. However, with Sharia law, I guess this is I don't have to mention this anymore. It's kind of obvious, but women are actually forced to abide the teachings in the Quran, complete head to toe in black clothing. So yeah. Moving on, this begs the question: why has there been so much popular support behind IS? In the documentary, we have seen that many of these people actually claim to have supported IS, whether it was because they were being forced to, or true devotion to the state. It is worth looking into, and from what I've seen, there have been a couple that I've seen. So first is there's been less minimal corruption and more thorough public inspections. So if you look at the previous administrations in power, whether it was in Iraq or Afghanistan or just Syria, these countries have not exactly been doing their jobs in regulating public services, and many of these citizens are sick of this. And one example in the document was store selling meat. The Hizbah, actually, the brigade actually took on they actually take action quite quickly compared to the other police forces of other countries. So that's one plus. More importantly, there's actually fairness in the courts. So basically, as in the United States Constitution, there was fairness in the eyes of the law. Here is fairness in the laws, in the eyes of Allah. So yeah, everyone is equal in that sense. Moreover, targeting Sunnis, especially, they've been feeling oppressed in Iraq, violence in Afghanistan, though it's somewhat unrelated, but even in Syria, where the Alawite minority has, what I do mean is Assad basically oppressing everyone and beating down rights. IS has been relatively more free in that sense, and yeah, that's one plus. However, if you want to go a little less and more soft, I guess you could say, it's been more of a romantic narrative for many women, as one ISIS or terrorist group expert said. Many of them actually try to see this as a story to find a strong Muslim man that is devoted to heroic cause, and yeah, that's pretty important to know. And lastly, I'm going to end this slide with is many ISIS has been attracting many female supporters also because of their gender neutral messages that do not only say, oh, we want men to come in, but no, instead they simply want anyone and everyone to come in. So yeah, expansion, that's basically what they want, always and in all ways. Anyways, basically to sum this up, there's been the main motive behind IS is basically religious, because it's quite obvious. Though I disagree with the Guardian in that sense that ISIS simply wanting power, and I mean, they do want power, but like the Guardian was arguing that it was not exactly fighting for Islam, and instead was Islam was only was only a medium in which to achieve this goal. But anyways, this is just some examples why I find that it is actually the conflict, the religious war or jihad ISIS is waging is actually religious and not of the others, simply because they do not fit in. So to start with, violations of international law. Obviously, anyone in any of these ISIS militias have not ever mentioned this at all. They have not been feeling unjust from any actions that have been resulted in the past, and yeah, I think that's a given. Racism, that's subjective because they've obviously hate on the Yazidis, Kurds, basically anyone in that range. But I wouldn't say that that's their main reason, because religion is their main motive, because that's what drives them to hate on others. So yeah, hatred toward global economic hegemony, that's fairly true, but given what those in power, I think the media chief, the chief who was in charge of media, he actually said that they didn't really matter, like though they didn't have the advanced electronics and economic strength that other countries had, it didn't matter because they were all completely happy. Yeah. Moving on, failure of conventional. I'm not sure, but this obviously is not a byproduct of violation diplomacy, because they really have not. And it's not really matter. There have been no negotiations. They're not dissatisfied because of something that's happened. Oppression. That's part of the reason, as previously mentioned, but that's not the main reason behind the original initial founders. So yeah. Supporting sympathizers, no, that's not it. Communications publicity, that is sort of the way they have been going around, but it's not the main primary method in which they want to spread their cause. Relative deprivation, poverty, not so much, and dignity, not so much important. Though it does apply, as I recently said, to many of the men that seek for an adventure. And finally, historical grievances, not so much, because they only relate to history, only for the emergence of an Islamic caliphate. So there you have it, guys. This is my bibliography, and this is